Coates out to deck. How you doing, guys?
Thank you.
It's like watching a film, but then all of a sudden we're in a film.
Roughly 5,000 metres above sea level. To give you an idea, that's about 700 metres on top of Kilimanjaro.
Race of cyclists still going.
Okay, cool. So we're back. And as you can see, we're joined with our biggest panel of the day. So this has definitely never been done before. We've got 3 guests on, 5 people chatting. So excuse us if we talk over each other and stuff. We'll try and have a bit of a chat, but we're all in hugely different parts of the world. We've got Natalia Cohen there over stateside. We've got Olie down south somewhere, and we've got Tiffany near Land's End in England. So we've got we're all over the place. So yeah, I thought really interesting videos. I thought we'd just throw them together. We had Ollie's walking down through India, Natalia obviously Pacific Ocean rower, and then Tiffany ridden everywhere in the world on a motorbike. So let's introduce everyone. Natalia, you want to go first? Tell you a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Natalia. I was born in South Africa and I moved to the UK when I was 5 years old. So that's where I grew up. And I suppose you can say that's where my love of travel and adventure first began. I wanted to follow my passion, so I actually got involved in the travel industry. And I spent about 15 years living and working in close to 70 different countries, doing lots of different roles, from leading adventure tours, some destination management, setting up volunteer placement projects, a couple of seasons working in the super yacht industry, and even managed a safari lodge in Tanzania. So I've ended up in some weird and wonderful places, but none of them were quite as extraordinary as the middle of the Pacific. And without a doubt, that was a very different type of travel.
Very much so, very much so. So let's keep going around. Let's go Tiffany next. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Okay, sure. Yeah. My dad was in the military, so I grew up on army bases, and my first school was Cantonese kindergarten because we were based in Malaysia. I think that was sort of pretty much in at the deep end as far as being in unusual situations, environments, that kind of thing. And I so grew up with itchy feet and then never stopped traveling once I left home. Did a lot of backpacking initially, and then completely by accident really ended up deciding to buy a motorbike with my best friend and ride it to India. So we literally had 2 months riding experience between us, bought an R80 GS and set off. Lots of drops and falls and learning how to off-road the hard way on a 1/4-ton bike, 2 up with all the luggage, but made it to India and then felt we just enjoyed it so much, kept going to Australia, came home through Africa, and then I haven't stopped since, crossed all the continents and sort of still go out to weird and wonderful places.
Awesome, can't wait to hear a bit more about them. And Olie, how about you, mate? Bit of an intro?
I love going on expeditions, both big and small, and I guess, you know, the thing that really gets me about traveling and going to all these incredible places is both pushing myself out of my comfort zone, really trying to find, you know, how hard I can push myself and at what point I might break, but also learning about the people, the place, the culture and the countries that I'm traveling through. And I feel like I get a lot from that, and hopefully I'm able to share a little bit of British culture or Western culture with those communities that I'm traveling through. So yeah, I've traveled down the length of the Amazon, which I spoke about earlier, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit maybe about the India journey that I did in 2017 as well.
Really interesting. So I'll kick us off with a bit of a question just to get things going then. So just come in straight away actually here from someone called Nick, and if we focus on what you are coming on in your seats, so land, sea and petrol, why do you choose to travel in that way? So should we kick off with you again, Natalia?
Sure. So a little bit similar to Ollie, I had actually never rowed before I got involved in this expedition. I don't think a lot of people that are ocean rowing have ever actually ocean rowed. Some of them might have come from river rowing backgrounds, but I'd never rowed before, and quite honestly, I'll probably never row again. For me, I've always had a love of the ocean, being in and around water. So I'm a Pisces, and I think that was a big part of the reason why I was drawn to this expedition in particular. If it had been a polar or an Arctic expedition, I probably wouldn't have been attracted to it. But because it was the sea and the ocean, that is one of my passions, and that was my original draw to this expedition. But as I said, it was nothing that I'd ever done before, and yeah, I think I was just really intrigued to push myself really far out of my comfort zone as well. And I think because of all of my years involved in travel, I'd come across so many incredible people, as Ollie said, like the people and the cultures. And when you spend a lot of time in the developing world, people, they have very little, but they have this incredible strength of spirit. And I'm very privileged. I've led a wonderful life, and I don't know. Part of me thought if I put myself in this really extreme situation, so far out of my comfort zone, I'm going to have to go very deep within to find that strength of spirit. Because I believe we all have that inner strength, but sometimes we're just not put in situations where we have to find it. And I think that was another draw to rowing the Pacific.
That's really interesting. So it's kind of like trying to find, I don't want to be too cliche here, but trying to find yourself. I mean, you're not going to find anyone else out in the ocean. It's going to be all about you and your kind of challenge. That's really interesting.
Yeah, finding that inner strength, because at the end of the day, it was a 90% mental challenge. I think like most things in life, it's all about what's going on up there, really. And I'm fascinated with the mind and psychology. So, yeah.
Very interesting. And what about you, Ollie? Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think traveling slowly does allow you to really appreciate the environment that you're traveling through. It also makes you incredibly approachable, which is one of the reasons I wanted to walk the length of India, is to make myself seem approachable so that I could then engage with people, have conversations on their level. And I think I got a lot out of that. I wanted to learn about the history of independence and partition and how that affected people back in 1947. So meeting people and talking to them and spending time with them was really the purpose of that trip. And I think if I'd traveled any other way, even by bicycle, I think it would have been a little bit too quick and I would have passed through so many places. But just by walking, I walked next to people. Some people joined me for half a day, out of their community and into the next one. And I just had a kind of an ongoing conversation with so many people. And I think, that's kind of why I like to travel slowly.
Very cool. How about you then, Tiffany?
Well, I'm obviously the one who travels the fastest with my petrol driven engine. I've always had a passion for travel, and like I said, did a lot of backpacking. And when I started the motorbike travel, it just blew me away, really. It's the sheer sense of adventure, the independence and the freedom to go wherever I wanted. And going on those two wheels, you can go anywhere. You can follow a footpath through the mountains to just stick the tent up somewhere quiet and remote on the edge of a hillside. So once I started with a motorbike, it was like, wow, I can't see myself going back to backpacking. Having said that, I do treks while I'm away on my bike, but deep ocean, I think that would just be too scary for me. So yeah, land-based, two wheels with an engine at the moment, but you never know, maybe one day a bicycle.
Very cool. Very cool.
I suppose it's quite interesting. It's just very quickly going back to, I've got a question in a minute, but it's quite interesting because Ollie said they're traveling slowly. And I do, I suppose, I probably agree with Ollie. I imagine you definitely do travel slower as a result of walking or something like that. But at the same time, I think what Tiffany's saying there, I mean, I guess the joy of a motorcycle, you have that option to do both in many ways. Someone like Sam Mannequin, for example, 8 years around the world in spent years in one continent, similar to Natalia's frontiers in America. So you kind of have the ability to do that, even though you're on a motorcycle, I guess is what I've always thought. But at the same time, I imagine walking is definitely slower. I think there's also challenges to these, and they're all very different sort of, they are very different. I mean, what would you guys say in terms of your best, worst best moments of doing these sort of adventures, and what's the most challenging part of it, and what in terms of what you do? I suppose we'll go with Natalia again. It's probably the easiest way to do this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the challenge that I was involved with and my team was very, very different. A big part of travel for me also is the interaction that you get with the people that you meet across your paths, and with the ocean there was none of that. The only interaction, so we were a team of 4 on the boat at any one time, but a team of 6 in total. So the journey went from San Francisco to Cairns, and we made 2 stopovers, one in Hawaii, one in Samoa, and we rotated 1 team member. So at any point, there was always 4 of us on the boat. So I think also compared to Tiffany and Olie, that's a very different dynamic. So you've got a team dynamic, which throws up many challenges as well. But also you do have that company. So there's pros and cons, I suppose, to both of them. With our expedition, we really planning and preparation was key for the success of this expedition. It was huge. We were completely unsupported out there, and as I mentioned before, I'd say 90% of it was really mental. So we had to do a lot of work with each other. We worked with an amazing sports psychologist called Keith Goddard, and a lot of it was personality profiling and working out how we could work together, how we could bring out the best in each other, knowing what our strengths were, playing to those strengths. So there was that whole dynamic that came into play as well. And then obviously the other huge difference, I suppose, is that monotonous, unchanging landscape that we had. So you guys, you're walking across the country or around the world, and every day is different. Whereas for us, if you think about it, every day was exactly the same. We spent 2 hours on, 2 hours off rowing. So 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day. And that happened for 257 days. So the monotony within everything was unbelievable. But what was amazing is that within that monotony, when you really focus and you pay attention, you find so much variety. Like, I never knew how many different shades of blue there actually are. And the ocean is in a constant change, constantly changing as well. And the sunrises and the sunsets, and just to be immersed in a 360 degree is like nothing else I've ever experienced. Like some of those sunsets and sunrises where it just feels like you're rowing through like liquid gold. We had rough weather. We had every conceivable type of weather you could think of, but like when we crossed the doldrums where everything became really flat, which you would think would be wonderful, but we had these undercurrents, so we could actually spend 24 hours rowing and we would actually have gone backwards, which was so demoralizing. But we would have these nights where it was so still. You would never think the ocean could be completely still. Like so still that during the day you could stand over the side of the boat and actually see your reflection. But at nighttime, the stars would reflect so perfectly in this pond-like water that it just felt like you were rowing through the galaxy, and it was just mind-blowing. And then, I suppose our friends were the wildlife. So we had whales and dolphins and turtles and birds and fish that were constant companions. Some of the birds would land on the boat. We had whales breaching. It was just, we felt so small and insignificant, yet so connected to everything. It was such a surreal experience.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It sounds incredible. I just want to jump in. It sounds incredible, but it makes it sound amazing. But what was it really like? Because I'm imagining you're rowing the whole time. It's got to be the salt water. It must have been actually really challenging at the same time. Right?
Definitely. It was frustrating and challenging. I'd say frustration was the biggest emotion that we all felt out there. And yeah, I suppose one of the differences as well with the expeditions is once we'd set off, that was it really. We sort of had to keep on going. There was no deciding to stop unless we were going to be rescued. And so we just had to make the best of every situation we found ourselves in, and just having that really positive mindset was so important. We could really help keep each other's spirits lifted. We had to look for positives, even if there weren't any. I mean, we were sitting on our asses essentially for 12 hours every day, and then lying in the cabin when, I mean, there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. We got salt sores and pressure wounds all over our asses. We got what we called claw hands, so from holding on to the oars for so long. I was wondering if, Tiffany, maybe you got that, if you were on really heavy roads and you were holding onto the handlebars, that way it was really
Patagonia.
yeah, to like open up your hands. And it was just uncomfortable. But I think what we did was we broke everything down into these manageable sized chunks. So we didn't think about the sheer length of time that we were going to be out there. Everything was like a 2-hour chunk of time. And if it was really challenging, all I thought to myself was, I've just got to get through the next 2 hours, and then I have a rest period. And I just sort of dealt with it like that, fully present and fully in the moment, not really thinking about what was coming ahead.
Awesome. Olie, I suppose, I mean, for you, I mean, maybe not for the length of time that like Natalia, in terms of being on the ocean for there's so many days we just see exactly the same thing all day, but you're walking, you can go for a mountain pass or something for, I don't know, a week or longer potentially. It almost looks exactly the same.
Yeah, no, definitely longer. I think the longest mountain pass I did was sort of, well, it was kind of 4 high passes. That was 16, 17 days in total. But I did have a guide and porters to help me on that part of the journey. But actually, a lot of people asked me what it was like kind of walking solo, on my own, day in, day out. And I often get asked whether I felt lonely at all, but it was not like that in the slightest. In fact, India is such an intense country that you end up spending so much time kind of speaking to other people, and people would just stop on their motorbikes and start a conversation and so on, that I actually craved a bit of alone time. I had people knocking, if I was staying in a hotel, people would knock on the door in the evening, and I'd be like, no, I need some time to myself to do my admin and back up my video footage and all of that sort of stuff, and just to decompress for a little while. And I think, Natalia touched on a couple of points there about the, a team dynamic, and I can certainly relate to, when you're tired and hungry and, things are going wrong. Certainly being in a team, you can come together and work through those problems, but at the same time, there can be frustrations and kind of a little bit grating, as I'm sure both of you guys found, on your journey. So I think, team dynamics, quite an interesting one. But yeah, in terms of the kind of monotony of going in, day out, doing pretty much the same thing, there were points where, I found myself physically pretty ground down, and I would have to try and motivate myself to move forwards. One of the ways I did that was I just said, look, walk until Sunday. It's 3 more days. And if you still haven't laughed, still haven't smiled, still haven't met anyone interesting, then you can rethink how you're going to walk. And I probably would have chosen a motorbike or even a bicycle. But, inevitably within a couple of hours or even a couple of days, one of those things had happened. And I'd sort of forgotten about the pains and aches that I was sort of, begin to get to me. And so I just kind of kept myself moving forwards like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, I suppose in many ways, on the one hand, you guys are sort of they're really difficult challenges, and I suppose in many ways, it's selling the ability for something like a motorcycle to be able to travel, because you have the opportunity to go to those sort of places where you can see something that's very similar for a few days. Equally, you can go somewhere really heavily populated if you want to. You have the ability to move quite fast. Equally, you can move quite slowly. But I also think that in terms of motorcycle travel and that sort of thing, people have sometimes a perception that it's easier, but there are certainly its own challenges that it sort of presents, and they can be extremely difficult. In terms of the challenges you face, Tiffany, I mean, what sort of issues do you have? I mean, what sort of things you have to come over mentally, physically, all that kind of thing?
Okay, so yeah, all of the above, the mentally, the physically, and the people who won't let me do anything with my motorbike because I'm female. That's always a biggie. Like, oh my goodness, no, you're a lady, you mustn't be putting petrol in your tank or changing your tire or doing your own maintenance. So that's always a bit of a challenge, and having to smile nicely and let them know, yes, I'm perfectly capable of doing these things. Although if it's tire changing and it's the middle of Africa and it's really hot, I'll let the guys do it, but I'll watch them as they do it. I think certainly like deserts, they're always challenging. And to begin with, they used to terrify me, partly because I had no idea what I was doing. So the first desert was Namibia, coming up through Africa on the way home from Australia. And it was like, bloody hell, sand, motorbikes, not a good combination. And this is the beginning of the African continent. Wait till we get to the Sahara and oh my goodness. So 2 up on a 1/4-ton bike with all the bags, trying to ride through the sand without sand tires because we didn't know what knobbly tires were. Dropped the bike an awful lot, got very dehydrated, heat exhaustion, whatever. It was really tough, but actually the toughest bit of the Sahara, or certainly for me the most challenging and scary bit, was actually water-based, because I think you guys have been through Sudan, haven't you?
Yeah.
And did you take the ferry at Wadi Halfa?
Yeah, well, we only did we didn't go up to Aswan though. Did you go all the way up to Aswan? We just did Abu Simbel, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So from Wadi Halfa, the ferry up to Aswan, and there'd been a big flood. I mean, this is the Sahara. Where's the flood coming? But there'd been a big flood. The quay had disappeared, and everything was being loaded from the sand at the side. And it meant there was, so it's a passenger ferry, it's not a traffic one, but they said they'd take a motorbike and just put it in the corridor. So I said, great. And I turned up and there was a wooden plank. And then it was these little floating pontoons with a little wooden plank between each one that I had to ride up a plank onto this bobbing pontoon, then another plank onto the next one. And when I'm on the plank, I can't get my feet down. Each pontoon was tiny, so I could barely get my feet down on that. And oh my goodness, so I had about 3 pontoons and then the final plank up onto the deck of the ship, which obviously there's all these people just clustered there watching this English woman trying to get this motorbike that's too big for her across these bobbing pontoons. And the whole time I was sort of looking down thinking, if my bike drops off these pontoons or these planks, it's going straight to the bottom of this very deep lake. So that was, my heart was in my mouth. But equally, I was the only person there who could do the bike, take the bike up there, because nobody else had ever ridden a big motorbike. So it's one of those, deep breath and go for it. I don't think I get the challenges with the monotony, perhaps, that Olie was saying, because it does change. And even places like Siberia or the prairies in Canada, the landscapes are so beautiful and they're so different from what we have in the UK that everything feels new and fresh. So it might go on for a long way. So yeah, I don't get that monotony. But certainly things like Patagonia, like Natalia was saying, you know, when your hands just end up clenched on the handlebars. And I'd been on the road for 10 months by the time I'd reached Patagonia, and the day of the big winds, and I ended up with calluses on my hands where I was just gripping so hard to stop myself being blown off the bike. The winds were just so strong. I was just having to really wrestle to keep the bike upright. The high points, oh my goodness, there's just too many to name, really. I suppose it's every destination that's successfully made. So whether it's from the top of Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, or crossing Africa, oh my goodness, the first tarmac road after the Sahara, it was one of those, off the bike onto the tarmac and just kissing it and sobbing almost, because oh my goodness, it's tarmac. But you know what, after a couple of days on tarmac, it was like, I think I'm missing the challenge of sand and off-roading again. So yeah, so all those highlights of making somewhere successfully, especially when it has been a challenging ride, and the sense of achievement when you think, bloody hell, done it.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think we should ask that question that we started off with at the beginning. So we've kind of got everyone sort of down and like the high points, the kind of travel. So who would swap with who? Who would go for what? So let's just kick it off in the circle again. Natalia, if you had to pick one of the other two, walking or motorbikes, what would you go and why?
I'm not very good on bikes. I think it could just be a disaster waiting to happen. Even though I love the sound of it, and you can cover a lot of ground, and maybe with a sidecar, actually.
There you go, someone talking some sense.
But if it wasn't with a sidecar, I'd definitely go walking. I love walking as well. I've done the Camino, which is obviously a tiny walk compared to what Olie's done, but I'm really passionate about the slow travel side of things as well. And I think to do something so completely different to the row where we came across no one except wildlife and captains on ships, to actually have that connection to the people and the cultures through the landscape that I was walking, I'd definitely go for a long walk.
Ooh. And how about you, Olie?
Well, I don't have a motorbike license, so to a certain extent, I'm thinking.
That's no barrier.
Yeah, that's not a barrier, man. You can't count that.
No, I mean, I do love the ocean. I love being out in the waves, and I kind of grew up down by the coast, down in Poole. So I think I would go for a rowing expedition. I have actually looked into doing the Round Britain rowing race. That's 2,000 miles. But the sort of plans didn't quite work out and things didn't come together. So, but I'd definitely love to do some kind of rowing-based expedition.
Cool. And how about you, Tiffany?
Well, I think I've already dobbed myself in with the fear of deep oceans. So yeah, I might live in Cornwall and I surf, but I don't want to go anywhere near really deep oceans. So it'd be the walking. I mean, I've done a lot of treks anyway, and I spent 3 months solo trekking through Bolivia once. So it would be walking and trekking. And also, like with the highlights before, a lot of that is about the people you meet on the way. And sometimes those people who have absolutely nothing, and all they can give you is water to drink, and they might give you some beans to eat. And the sheer joy of meeting people who have that joy for life. So, and you would experience that with the walking. So sorry, Natalia, it might not be rowing, but so walking.
Fine.
I'll tell you what, guys, we're running out of time, but one thing we were going to try and touch on, because a few people had actually messaged in. It was sort of about, sort of lockdown, isolation, mental health. And I mean, do you reckon the things you've done serves you well for what's going on at the moment? I mean, obviously, all you travel in large part solo, even though you might meet locals or potentially not meet anyone. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think it stood you in good stead for how uncertain it is right now? Or, I mean, may as well start with you again, Natalia.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, since coming back from the row, which was actually, we set off 5 years ago, a few days ago, actually, it was our 5-year anniversary, which is crazy. I've been speaking, so talking about some of the stories, but sharing insights really into leadership, teamwork, mental resilience, dealing with change, dealing with uncertainty. My story has never been more relevant than right now. I mean, what we experienced out there as a team was essentially self-isolating. I mean, we were in a tiny space. We couldn't leave. We chose it. So I suppose it was a chosen lockdown. Just finding ways to entertain ourselves, finding ways to make sure that we got on well, because I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people at the moment is, families are all together where they're not normally together for 24/7, and that it puts a strain on you, definitely. So, I mean, we worked with lots of little touch points like hot buttons, what brings out the worst in you, and we would share those things with each other. And having that understanding of what brings out the worst in you is really useful, because you know how not to piss people off, basically. And I think just having that really open, honest conversation, which we had to have out there, that was so instrumental to the success of our expedition, and for us to actually get on well, is so important now. Communication is probably one of the most important things. Remaining connected, which obviously we're doing virtually at the moment, which is not quite the same as that face-to-face, but it's better than nothing. And just making sure that people are just sharing how they're feeling all the time. And I think maybe doing that constant check-in with one another. So out there on the ocean, every week, we would have this questionnaire that we would fill in on how we were feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, and we would be constantly sharing what was going on for us each mentally. And I think that's a really good practice to put into place now, you know, constantly checking in with one another and seeing how they are. Even if you're working with people remotely, you know, how are you doing today? Because one of the most amazing things about being in the middle of that ocean was the simple way of life. We had no outside noise, no distraction, and we had this incredible ability to really listen to one another and to be heard. And that's something that has completely got lost in this day and age. And just treating each other with compassion and empathy, and having that understanding of what's going on. And then I think also just looking for positives. You know, everyone is struggling during this time now, you know, and everyone's got different challenges, without a doubt. But we can't keep thinking about the negatives. We've got to try and concentrate on the positives. And that's exactly what we did out there. So every day we would share a daily highlight. No matter what it was, we had to find a highlight. So for the toilet, we basically used a bucket. It was a very simple process: bucket and chuck it. So, you know, a highlight could have been a satisfactory bowel movement, a good poo in the bucket. It could have been washing your hair. I went 68 days without washing my hair. It could have been a beautiful sunrise or sunset. The point was, you just had to make a point to look for something positive every day. And I think that's also what we need to do now, is look for the positives and think about what we're grateful for. I think it's so important to think about what we have rather than what we don't have or what we're missing right now.
Yeah, really good points.
I do agree, yeah. But I suppose, Olie, what are any thoughts on that as well?
I mean, I must admit, I find lockdown pretty tricky. I love to stay active and, you know, always doing different things and stuff. And being forced to spend a lot of time indoors I do find hard. But I do maximise the time I am allowed outside, you know, get my exercise in, and I kind of go as far as I can, and as quickly as I can, ironically. Yeah, I think there's something about the mental resilience of sort of challenging yourself to get through this. And I do love challenging myself in many different ways. And, you know, I just see this as another challenge that life has kind of thrown at me. But I think there are little tricks and things like that you can do. So I do look at some of my photos from my previous expeditions. You know, just preparing some talks and stuff has really helped me kind of revisit some of those memories. But you know, doing really basic things like sharing a photo a day, something, as you guys said, is something that's made you smile, made you happy, you know, and sharing that with one friend or on social media or whatever, you do kind of get that really sort of positive vibe back. And I think that's something that kind of does keep you motivated, and we'll get through this.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, obviously, same for you, Tiffany. I suppose as well, you mentioned it before as well, you obviously plan to go to Overland Expo. There's like a disappointment there, and now you can't go. I mean, you know, what are your thoughts on it all?
Yeah, so there is that thing of events being cancelled and therefore not being able to see friends as well. A lot of friends at Overland Expo that I'll see year after year. And so I think what does help is that strength I think we all get. So, you know, with the solo travel or that huge challenge of rowing across the Pacific, you do get comfortable, you know, with your own company, and you build up that strength and that belief in yourself as well, that, you know, I can do this. I mean, there's certainly every single trip, there's always times when it feels really miserable and you're thinking, why on earth am I doing this? But there's also that strong streak of optimism of, you know what, things are going to come out all right. you know, I'm going to look back, and sometimes the most miserable times have given you the biggest laughs afterwards when you look back on them and go, oh my goodness. So it's knowing that you can look back on stuff. And it's the simple things in life as well, like Olie was saying. I mean, I'm lucky because I live in a really beautiful area and I've got a garden as well, so I can get outside. You know, I've discovered gardening. Well, okay, I might not have many flower pots, but guess what? This is a BMW engine cover, and these are my bean plants growing in that. So it's just here on the windowsill. And it's yeah, so I've discovered gardening. I usually go away so much that I don't have a chance to flower, you know, sort of to see things flower, let alone weed them and water them. So yeah, so enjoying the simple things in life, and the food as well. So cooking some of my favorite foods, because I'm sure we've all had the same experience. You're miles from home and you are just thinking, oh my goodness, what would I give for a nice roast dinner, or in my case maybe a pasty. So yeah, just sort of thinking, you know what, yeah, we're in lockdown, but I can still get food, I can cook what I want. I can try out dishes that I discovered in other countries. One of my favorite Indian dishes is idli, so I make idli. So yeah, so getting the pleasure from the simple things, but keeping in contact with people so you're not feeling so isolated, and you know, and really listening to other people. So not just go, oh hi, how are you, oh by the way I did this. It's like, you know, how are you really feeling? Because I think we'll all go through natural highs and lows with it, but we're going to get through this, and we are a lot better off than so many people in this world.
Definitely. Well, yeah, really interesting, guys.
One thing, Matt, so I just wanted to say that there's incredible solidarity that comes through shared suffering. I mean, without a doubt, that's what we as a team found out there. And I think that's something that's happening now, is that we're all actually going through this together, which has never happened before. And it's something so special. And I think it will just connect and unite us all as a humanity, really, anyway. So it's...
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, it's definitely a really good point. I mean, definitely here in the UK, people are outside, you see on social media, playing bingo in the street and stuff. I mean, when would that ever happen? It's crazy. It's where it's bringing people together. So you're completely right. And focusing on the little things as well. And I think that's pretty much what you all said in one way or another, is taking the small positives in life.
Cool. So that was the Land, Sea and Petrol panel. We had Natalia Cohen, the Sea, Olie Hunter Smart, the Land, and Tiffany Coates, the Petrol. So I thoroughly enjoyed that one. It was great to get a few different perspectives on adventure and how you can do it and that sort of stuff. But one of my favourites of the Armchair Adventure Festival, which I do actually say for most of these reviews that we do at the end of the Armchair Adventure Festival content, mate, it's because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah. I can't help but notice, mate, that you're in a different setting today, aren't you?
In a different setting.
Kind of, you're late to the party, but you've joined in quite a big way.
Yeah, yeah. It's all or nothing with me. In for a penny, in for a pound. And
that is quite the armchair.
Yeah, it is. I've been waiting to get my hands on this for quite a while, actually. So, yeah, no, I'm in a new location. Obviously, lockdown's easing slightly, so you have to move around a bit more. So I thought, right, I'll go and head to my nearest armchair, and
there you are.
Yeah. So
good on you, mate. Yeah, so that was the Land, Sea and Petrol panel. Thoroughly enjoyable. I think we'll do more of that at the next festival, panels and things, chatting about different kinds of adventure. Good stuff. Really interesting. So next week, we're going to have Nathan Millward come on.
Yeah.
Nathan, talking about his trip with Dorothy, the Australian postie bike. Took it from Australia back to the UK, and then he took it up through the States to Alaska, that sort of stuff. So yeah, he's going to be on chatting about his adventures on his tiny little postie bike. Small bikes, big adventures, I think was a capture for this one, mate. And it's a great little talk, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we just talked about the pros and cons of a small bike compared to a big one. So it is interesting. And you know, people thoroughly enjoy Nathan. He's a good egg. So
yeah,
it'll be nice to relive that experience, won't it?
Well, yeah.
So,
and I mean, you can actually try it out for yourself these days, hey mate? He's shipped over a load of postie bikes from Australia. He runs postie tours in the south of England, in Cornwall, Devon. out of a place called Dorothy's Speed Shop, which is a little sort of bikers hangout he's created down south.
That's true, yeah. I thought you were going to say there, mate, you can also relive Nathan's talk right now, if you are watching this, because you can head over to our Patreon page. And
Oh, that's... Bless you, mate.
Hey, Felix.
Bless you. Yeah.
You can head over to our Patreon page right now and relive Nathan's talk as well, or head to Devon.
Or head to Devon. So they're your options. They're your options. It's either $1 a month on the Patreon page.
Yeah.
Or get yourself to Devon, which would cost considerably more, but would be considerably better.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your options. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. I hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you next week.